everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick unboxing and first look at the Sony A7R Mark II. Priced at $3,200 US, this is the most expensive and impressive full-frame mirrorless camera that Sony has ever made, and in my opinion it brings us full circle from their very first offering back in 2012, which shared a similar price point, the VG900. Really more of a proof of concept that you could achieve the best of both worlds, both still and video, in a single mirrorless interchangeable full-frame body, but it lacked the maturation both in technology and glass that the A7R Mark II benefits from. So with that out of the way, let's take a look at specifications. You can see the first thing that you'll notice, and probably that this camera will be touted for, is its 42.4 megapixel backlit full-frame sensor. In addition to that, new autofocus system, 399 points in the phase detection realm, 25 in the contrast, and this is best in class. In addition, we've got 5-axis steady shot on board for native FE lenses, E-mount lenses. If you work with third-party glass, Canon, Nikon, legacy stuff, then you'll be limited to 3 levels of, or 3-axis stabilization. We have an improved viewfinder, 4K video capture, which I'll be getting to a little bit later, and that autofocus system is really key. We've got an electronic shutter, which means no noise when you release that shutter button. All video inside the highest quality will be captured with XAVCS, 100 megabits per second. That's, of course, UHD video capture. You can step down to AVC HD. A bevy of accessories right here, as you'd expect from Sony. Wi-Fi, NFC on board, all powered by the Bionz X processor. But let me go ahead and get this thing out of the box, because I know that's what you're all really waiting for. And that includes myself here, because I am really excited to finally have my hands on this camera. Really the culmination of Sony's full frame, or in general, their mirrorless DI business. So the paperwork to be expected, a solid amount. Get that out of the way. Let's get to what's cooking inside the box. Now, I remember when the original NEX7, Sony's then highest end, of course not full frame, mirrorless camera launched, there was quite a bit of presentation or pomp and circumstance. Sony really focusing now here on the camera itself. And you can see already out of the box, awarding with any buyer of this camera what many users desire, which is an external battery charger. This is not something that you're going to have to hook up to the camera. No micro USB forced upon you, even though I see a benefit in having that. But Sony listening to consumers and providing those of you that really wanted a dedicated battery charger with one. So that's the first thing you'll notice. We've got a Alpha A7 branded camera strap. Much of the body design, by the way, does lend itself from the A7 Mark II, just like the stabilization that I pointed out before. And essentially, this really is, in my opinion, not only the best mirrorless camera on the market right now, but arguably the best digital camera on the market. And pretty much, as far as I can see so far, the initial reviews are right in line with what I just mentioned. Now, of course, the battery's down there. I'll get to that in a moment, but I wanted to show you the body and give you a look at that immediately. You can see right there, as I mentioned before, really the design lending itself from the A7 Mark II. Just, it's all about what's under the hood. And the new autofocus system, the new sensor, the highest megapixel count in the mirrorless world, the highest megapixel in a BSI sensor, period, the end. NFC Wi-Fi on board, no surprise there. That OLED viewfinder, your articulating screen right here, and I will do a walk around of the body, but I just wanted to show you that quickly. Quite a bit of heft to this body, but that's part of this entire second generation theme, which began with the A7 Mark II, because Sony wants to accommodate the larger, more robust FE lenses that they've been continuing to pump out, and I believe they'll continue to do so because this has been a successful lineup for them. So under this section of the box right here, you can see we've got the balance of accessories, Sony including a USB transfer cable right here, and that is micro, and you can use that to charge on body as well. And then they also include 2 batteries, not 1, but 2. So another nice touch. They realize you are spending quite a bit of coin. They're trying to give you everything you need, at least out of the box. And then you also have the wall adapter right there. for charging on the body in the event that you want to use the micro USB rather than the dedicated wall charger. And this is something Sony has been getting better and better at, which is listening to the consumer. So not only are they really materially trying to give us a better product, but they're also listening to what consumers are looking for. So now that I've got the camera here, let's take a closer look at that. And I'm going to push the accessory pile away, something you traditionally wouldn't see coming out of a Sony package, but we do have here. So I mentioned before that the A7R Mark II is really essentially based around the build, look, and feel of the A7 Mark II, and it is. But there are some distinguishing differences, but that's not what today's video is about. It's about this camera, the fact that we do have 4K video, the fact that we do have 5-axis stabilization, we have eye detection, autofocus, which, by the way, will not work with third-party lenses, but when you're working in the native realm is going to be incredible, at least from what I've seen, in terms of acquiring and locking on with at least the autofocus system. So a big improvement, one of the things that I think many consumers were critical of. The other thing is the fact that we now have a silent shutter here. This is using an electronic shutter, so something that the A7R did not have, and I have my A7R right here with the Zeiss 24-70 f4 lens mounted on it, which I'm not going to say lives on it because I do also enjoy using my 70-200G f4 lens, but you can see the body has taken quite a departure from what the original A7R looked like. We're getting more grip, relocation of the shutter button, the dials have changed. There's basically a variance in the customization buttons. You can see C1 and 2 now flanking each other on the A7R Mark II. And some will argue that they preferred the older body, but I think most will enjoy using the A7R Mark II over the original A7R, which I still love, don't get me wrong. But the larger grip, definitely a welcomed addition for those bulkier lenses that inherently come with getting faster full-frame glass into the pipeline for Sony's Alpha line of mirrorless cameras. In terms of the backside of the A7R Mark II, very similar again to the A7 II. We've got that articulating screen that I showed before. It doesn't flip around. It's gotten a little bit slimmer, but pretty much the same range of motion, no touchscreen. Then we have access to all of our ports. And by the way, this does, of course, have clean HDMI out for those of you that are wondering. Right there, you can see the mic jack and headphone jack for monitoring. And then next to that, this is a weatherproofed camera, by the way, weather sealed. We have our micro USB, which Sony refers to as a multi-port, and our HDMI out. And as I mentioned before, clean HDMI out, as you would expect from a camera of this grade. And really what excites me about this is that this is the first body that I can really say at least attempts to do everything. And that's why I brought up the original VG900, because it did attempt to bring you the best of both worlds, but came up short really in terms of the maturity, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, of both technology and its own native lens lineup, which was non-existent back then. Also, because of the 5-axis, even 3-axis stabilization with non-Sony native glass, this camera really also accomplishes what the original VG900 and every E-mount successor attempted to, which is pull over Nikon and Canon users because they won't have to give up the glass they've already invested in. And that is a big selling point that Sony always marketed but couldn't necessarily fulfill. You can see we've got a single slot SD card right there. Many users will wish or hope that Sony would have put 2 on here, much like they wish they could have gotten completely lossless, compressed images. But I really think that that's being, I won't say picky, because you're entitled to your opinion. There's the battery bay right there. I'm curious to see what battery life will be like on this, especially when shooting 4K video. 4K video, by the way, is limited to a little under 30 minutes, 29:59, because this is not a video camera. We do now have a Zeiss branded viewfinder, something that we didn't have on previous generations. So I do expect best-in-class OLED EVF capability from this camera, just like all of the other full-frame mirrorless cameras that Sony has made in the past, except this now takes it up another notch. Your NFC contact point, your video capture, your dial right here to go through the menus, and of course, basically all the things that any Sony consumer customer is accustomed to seeing on a camera, whether it's focus control, display, what's on screen, your function button, quick access to your ISO, whatever it may be, it's there. Your timer, your actual continuous shooting preferences, your menu button is up here on the left-hand side. C3, and as I mentioned before, C1 and 2 relocated in front of the shutter button and the power switch. And I will go ahead and see if we've got any juice in the batteries included. Of course, I do also have batteries. I've got one right now sitting in my A7R. So a lot to like about this camera. Again, I wouldn't say incredible leap in resolution, but the 5-axis stabilization with E-mount lenses, the 4K video, the ability to have that new eye autofocus system, which from what I've seen is amazing. And in addition to that, again, support for stabilization in non-Sony glass really does set this apart from just about everything else we've ever seen in Sony's lineup, other than the A7, which of course did not have this resolution, nor did it have 4K video capability. So I'm going to go ahead and pop in the battery, see if I can get this thing to boot up. Hopefully I do have some charge on here, and I think I will. Skip through the beginning menu there and immediately just take you right in to the actual settings. And you can see 42 megapixels right there. We have several different options in terms of aspect ratio as well, what you would expect, 3:2 and 16:9. Your quality, you can shoot in the typical RAW and JPEG, or extra fine, fine, or standard. This is not new to Sony cameras. I generally shoot with RAW and JPEG, which gives you the best of both worlds. File format, they always start off at AVC HD because they know most consumers aren't necessarily taking on 4K yet, but that's easy to switch into. And you can see by default, they're giving us 30p 60 megs per second. I, of course, will step it up to the 100 megabits per second. And you do need to make sure that you have an SDXC UHS 3 card that is fast enough to actually write these video files. So keep that in mind. That doesn't mean you can't use a slower card. You're just not going to be able to capture 4K. By the way, 5 frames continuous autofocus on this camera. I've read some mixed things about the lock on autofocus. I don't want to get into that right now. That's something I'll address as I actually use the camera myself. Your drive mode, bracket settings, just a quick run through. I wanted to show you this. S-Log is available on here, something that if you're familiar with Sony's professional video cameras, it's something they've added to this camera, as well as the RX100 Mark IV and the RX10 Mark II, and something that is wholeheartedly welcomed for videographers just about everywhere on a camera of this magnitude. So that's another impressive feature that you're getting if video is part of at least what you're purchasing this for, and quite frankly, it should be. That doesn't mean it has to be your driving focus, but I would see it being beyond relative, since this is Sony's first full-frame mirrorless interchangeable lens camera to record UHD video, and from what I've seen, the samples are amazing. So build quality looks good. Of course, you've got a dial up here, customizable. Pretty much everything on here is customizable beyond this dial itself, which is very solid. I have to point that out. And you've got that lock button there, which is going to allow you to switch modes. I personally don't feel that needed to be added, but Sony, again, I guess listening to customer feedback, we still have our multi-interface hot shoe right here, which is going to slide off and allow you to mount flashes, other accessories, XLR, audio in the event that you require it. So that is definitely a nice touch. You can see the microphones right here on the left-hand side of the body for on-body audio recording. And really, I have high expectations for this camera in every regard. Even low light capability, from what I've seen, because of the sensor being backlit, is amazing. I mean, this thing is able to take on the A7S and pretty much destroys everything that Canon and Nikon have on the market right now. So a lot to like here. Yes, it's expensive, but you are getting more than any other manufacturer can put together in a single body right now. So in many ways, I won't call it a bargain, but you absolutely are getting what you pay for. And that is what makes this camera so unique. But battery life is going to determine a lot. I want to see if we do hit any overheating along the way. You can see I've got 100% charge, so I'm ready to start shooting. And Essentially, again, a best-in-class, not just a proof-of-concept camera from Sony, which is not a surprise. After all, as I keep mentioning, this really is the culmination of their full-frame DI business. In closing, the only things I want to point out, I already mentioned the new faster hybrid autofocus system, because that is key. The electronic shutter, again, silent now, so no shock, no vibration that many complained of in the past with the A7R, even when on an actual tripod mounted. They were still experiencing it. Also, better accommodation for heavier lens system, which I think was absolutely necessary. You will feel the weight of the magnesium alloy body, and I know some people will argue, well, things got bigger, and that really isn't an inherent advantage when the whole point of mirrorless is to go lighter. This is still substantially smaller than anything that the competition makes. Forget that it's more competent in every way. And the silent shutter, I can't stress enough how much I am in love with that feature. Ever since my RX1, it's something I had wished would come to the Alpha full-frame lineup in the mirrorless, of course, world, and we do now have that. The Wi-Fi and NFC is really a toss-up. I mean, Play Memories application store is solid, definitely has some great applications. The time-lapse app, a personal favorite. Video grading is another nice one, and they just continue to build on that. But again, it's all about this improvement in autofocus, the 4K video, the image stabilization being there for every lens that you could possibly throw on it, which is critical because that was really one of the biggest, I would say, impediments to taking on third-party glass that now has been destroyed. And then that low light capability, a whole new standard here with this camera, something you wouldn't expect from a 42 megapixel sensor. Usually there's more of a compromise. We don't have that problem anymore. So, or at least from what I've seen, the problem has been minimized in a very big way. So a lot to be excited about, and for good reason. This isn't just the successor to the A7R. This is a whole new breed of full-frame camera from Sony, and as I mentioned before, it really does take us full circle, in my opinion, from the elder statesman, the very first full-frame mirrorless camera that Sony ever offered, the VG900, also the only camera at that price point in the full-frame mirrorless world from Sony. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.